Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And here I have a great article for you guys from Fierce Wireless. I will leave a link to it in the description down below, and I highly encourage you guys to check it out. So small cells, still early days in the journey. So you guys who have seen the video that I made about T-Mobile on small cells, that is going to be very important for them. Verizon, I strongly feel, and I'm confident when I say that, they're not in the early days of the small cells or the journey. I just think Verizon has a leg up on the competition in this regard, and they recognized it a lot sooner than anyone else that small cells were needed, especially where the industry is going with fixed wireless access. Verizon recognized that very early on. They got going with the permitting, and they have a lot of small cells that they've built into the network and continue to do so. So if I had to choose a carrier that's the furthest along on small cells, it has to be Verizon, hands down across the board. They needed small cells during LTE because they had the lowest amount of spectrum per customer. So a few years ago, I got documents sent to me of a massive small cell build out in Chicago, which is a heavy urban area, very densely populated. Verizon got going very early on with connecting fiber to the nodes, and they just started deploying them everywhere because they knew in some cases it was going to be too hard to build macros in some of those neighborhoods. So they went and they put up small cells. And they're still doing it. They're doing small cells that have LTE CBRS. They're doing some small cells that have millimeter wave only. They are just continuing with the offloading. And I hear, that will continue. They're going to do some small cells specifically. Then they're going to do what they call a SMACRO, which is like, it looks like a small cell, but it's actually a full-blown macro. They're going to continue that process year after year moving forward. They're just going to do it. They're not going to slow down. They are the furthest along. They know what it takes to really have a fixed wireless access network and to keep the churn as low as possible. They're doing it with millimeter wave. And if you now listen to T-Mobile, their tune kind of changed a little, right? Verizon was out of the gates first with LTE, and everyone followed. Verizon knew that 5G NR was going to be the next wave of technology, that they just didn't have the spectrum to act on midband. But the engineers also understood, hey, we're going to need small cells and we are going to need this millimeter wave. So they got started on that first. Now T-Mobile is changing their tune. At first T-Mobile was like, we got all this midband, we're going to deploy that. We got a dense macro grid. Now T-Mobile is saying, well, small cells make sense. We are going to deploy millimeter wave. We're just studying it, making sure that it makes economic sense. They're starting to change their tune. Why? Because they know they also need it. And T-Mobile also said, hey, we can fund a different capital plan separate from our run rate to fund a millimeter wave build out where it makes sense. And that's what Verizon is doing too. They're deploying millimeter wave where it makes sense. They're not just building millimeter wave for Billy Bob Joe. They're just not telling you that they're doing it where it makes sense. Verizon is just telling you that they're deploying it. You really think Verizon is going to sit there and deploy millimeter wave where it doesn't make sense? It's all about the wording. Verizon has done it smartly, and now the results, Verizon's going to be ahead on this in a big way. They are going to be ahead on a C-RAN deployment, densely millimeter wave deployment, where they have those hot pockets of high usage, where millimeter wave is concentrated. They know, the engineers know. And on top of that, they have a very capacitive macro grid that you're going to hand off to once you get outside of those small cells, and vice versa. You're going to hand off from a great capacitive macro network onto a great small cell grid that is continuing to be established. They won't stop this. They will not stop. And who's going to be behind? T-Mobile. Yes, T-Mobile deployed about between 25 to 30,000 small cells during LTE. I understand that. but they were mostly strand mounts. And, you know, in really concentrated areas, right, where usage is already heavy. So yes, those areas they gain the tower gains, you know, offloading because those people are going onto the small cells. But T-Mobile didn't really go into the neighborhoods building C-brand like Verizon has to really offload that fixed wireless access. In many cases, Verizon can literally offer fixed wireless access off of these small cells. That's how close they are to consumers in their houses, where the macro is not even affected one bit. So just kind of wanted to share that with you guys. Verizon is very strategic and very forward thinking with a vision that they have, you know, the engineers, and they're doing it the right way. The other carriers, and AT&T included, they will eventually pivot, but they will be behind to Verizon on that type of deep and dense deployment on millimeter wave, and then eventually to the ones that are LTE only. Verizon will go back to those and upgrade them with C-band as well, and CBRS and everything else, and maybe even millimeter wave. So let me know what you think about that in the comment section down below. Look forward to reading all your comments. Make sure you guys stay tuned to the channel for more. See y'all in the next one. Peace.